Hello class, today I want to talk to you about your MLA citation formatting. We're going to focus on your works cited page. Couple of primary things to think about with your works cited page. It's always going to be at the end of your paper and you're always going to want to start it on a brand new page. So even if your paper ends at the very top of page 2, you still want to go all the way to the top of page 3 to start your works cited page. On that works cited page, keep your entries double spaced. At the top of the page in the center, you want to type work cited or works cited, depending on how many works you are citing. That's going to be centered just like the title on your first page, so don't change the font at all, just put it in the center of the page. And then you'll want to also create a hanging indent, which is essentially the opposite of a paragraph, but I will show you how to do that in just a minute. On that works cited page, your citations are all going to start with the author's last name, and then first name, of course, and then the title of your passage, and then that'll be followed by the container, which is wherever you got that passage or video or image from. And then if you have more than one entry, you just want to make sure that you put everything in alphabetical order. This is an example of what a works cited page would look like. The first entry is from your Wake Tech English 111 reader, so you can use that as an example when you're citing any of the passages from the reader. The second is from a database from the Wake Tech library, which you'll be using in future papers. So take note of how that one looks too, and you can use that as an example as well. So when you're doing your citations, there's several programs online that can help you create your citations, which are perfectly fine to use, but just be really careful because they don't always create your citations correctly. If you look at the top example, this is an example where I used a feature called Cite This, and this was the citation it gave me. When what I really want is an MLA 8th edition citation, which is at the bottom of the screen. So you can see the difference between the two. All the basic information is there, just the formatting things are different. So just make sure you double check, use your LB Brief or the Purdue OWL online to double check that the citation was set up correctly. Okay, so let's put one together. So like I said, you are going to start on a brand new page, and at the top of that page, well, first of all, let's set up the formatting. So we should be Times New Roman, which would already be set up because you would have been working in your paper. And we want to make sure the double spacing is still maintained. Again, you would have already set those settings because you would have typed your paper probably. So those would already be done for you. So what you want to do is center and type work or works cited, depending on how many citations you have. Hit enter and come back over to the left margin. So let's say we're doing this citation here from Martin Luther King. So notice it's last name, comma, first name with a period. Next thing is going to be to put the title of the reading. So if we're using our Wake Tech reader, we're going to put that in quotation marks. You also want to put a period, and that period is going to go inside the quotation marks. And be sure you're always hitting the space bar in between that punctuation, otherwise everything gets kind of jumbled and looks a little funny when you try to set the hanging indent. So if we go back to the example, you can see the title of our textbook is next, and it's going to be in italics. So we want to set italics. That's the only thing in italics. So take the italics off now. So just remember large containers like book titles, journal titles, magazine titles, all of those are going to be italicized, and then all of the little articles within those books or journals or magazines are going to go in quotation marks. So it's only one thing in italics and one thing in quotation marks. So notice the punctuation going forward. We started with periods after the author's name, after the title of the passage, and then after that, everything is followed by commas. Okay, so make sure that you're switching up your punctuation per MLA 8th edition. Okay, so we have a comma next, and then we had the editor's name. Make sure we spelled that right. Notice the E for edited is lowercase, so be sure to keep yours lowercase. And then you'll notice the et al. After the editor's name. So when you look at the front of your textbook, you can find the editors' names, and you'll notice that there's a lot of names of editors. So instead of listing every editor out, because there's so many of them, what we do is we use the et al., which stands for and others. So take note of how it's lowercase, and there's also a period and a comma, so you want to do the punctuation that way with a space. Next, you want to figure out what edition your book is. So this particular one is a 2nd edition. Again, notice that the E is lowercase, so we're not capitalizing it. It's an abbreviation, so we're using a period, and then we're putting our comma. Next, you'll see we have the publisher's name to get that information from any future books you're using. Again, just reference one of those first few pages of the book and you should be able to find the publisher's name, and it's probably even on the cover itself somewhere. So we're doing Hayden McNeil. Okay, and then next we have the year. So find the year of your textbook. And remember, I'm always putting commas after everything. And finally, you just need to end with the page numbers. If it's 1 page, you can do P period. If it's 2 pages, you have to do the double P's. Be sure to hit that space bar, and for this particular one, it's page 109 to 123. Just like you end a sentence with a period, you also want to end each of your citations with a period. Okay, so we have all the information, but now we need to make sure it is a hanging indent. The easy way to do that is to highlight everything that needs to have the hanging indent. So don't highlight works cited, but everything underneath that. And if you right-click, you can go to paragraph, and over here where it says special, you want to click on that drop-down and select hanging. Okay, and it indents it for you, the 0.5, which is what we want, and we hit OK. And so everything that you highlighted will have that hanging indent. So again, the indent looks like the opposite of a paragraph. The first line stays to the left, and every line underneath that gets indented. So if your citation goes for 3 or 4 lines, the first line stays over, and the second, third, and fourth line all get indented as well. And then when you're ready to start your next entry, right, if you haven't typed it yet, it brings the cursor back for you, and then it'll create that hanging indent. So hopefully this was a good tutorial for you. Please let me know if you have any questions.